Imagine a courtroom drama unfolding live, where one of the most powerful figures in America, Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, stands accused of a secret deal that could rock the foundation of the nation's highest court. As allegations surface, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi presents explosive documents that claim Barrett's confirmation was part of a behind-the-scenes agreement. The room goes silent. What follows is a battle of wits, facts, and unrelenting pressure that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the judicial system. But before we dive into this story, I want to hear from you. Comment down below, where in the world are you watching from? Let's light up this comment section. And hey, if you love stories with high drama, power shifts, and the kind of moments that leave people speechless, you're in the right place. Tap that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we drop the next chapter in these powerful, untold stories. Today, we're diving into this explosive showdown that could have altered the course of American law and politics. From leaked emails to handwritten notes, Barrett is forced to defend her integrity against accusations of unethical conduct, while Bondi pushes for answers. But who is telling the truth, and what happens when the facts are put to the ultimate test? Stay tuned as we break down this intense political drama that has the nation on the edge of its seat. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room buzzed with anticipation as former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi made her way toward the podium. The camera flashes illuminated her confident stride, her blue blazer standing out sharply against the dark, wood-paneled walls of the historic chamber. She adjusted the microphone with a practiced hand, fully aware that the eyes of the nation were upon her. Across the room, sitting composed in her chair, was Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of practiced judicial calm that belied the storm brewing just a few feet away. Bondi stood tall, her voice unwavering as she began, "Thank you for allowing me to speak today." Her words rang out clearly in the chamber. "I come before this committee with evidence that will change everything we thought we knew about Justice Barrett's appointment process." The room, filled with senators, aides, and journalists, fell silent. Every eye was locked on Bondi as she reached into her briefcase, pulling out a sealed folder stamped in bold red letters, "Confidential." The folder was more than just paper. It was the key to what Bondi claimed was a bombshell revelation. With a steady hand, Bondi carefully opened the folder, and as she did, the room held its breath. Inside were documents that, according to Bondi, would expose a secret arrangement made before Barrett's confirmation to the Supreme Court. An agreement that had never been disclosed to this committee, nor to the American people. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Justice Barrett's calm exterior cracked, just slightly, as her eyes widened, her hand instinctively tightening around the edge of the table. Across the chamber, senators and aides leaned in, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. The chairman of the committee, who had been prepared for a routine hearing, quickly reached for his gavel. But it was too late. The revelation was already unfolding, and the room was on the verge of chaos. Bondi's words echoed through the room, sending ripples of tension through every corner. "What I am about to reveal," she continued, "shows a secret arrangement that occurred before Justice Barrett's confirmation, an arrangement she has never disclosed to this committee or to the American people." The air in the chamber was thick with anticipation, and the stakes could not have been higher. If what Bondi was claiming was true, it would call into question the very integrity of Barrett's confirmation process and her ability to serve impartially on the nation's highest court. If proven false, however, it could spell the end of Bondi's career, tarnishing her credibility and potentially leading to legal consequences for defaming a sitting Supreme Court justice. At this pivotal moment, the tension was palpable. The eyes of the nation were fixed on the proceedings, and the outcome of this confrontation could alter the future of the Supreme Court forever. Would Bondi's allegations stand up to scrutiny, or would Justice Barrett's composed demeanor and steadfast defense prove that the claims were nothing more than a carefully constructed narrative? The hearing had taken an unexpected turn, and there was no turning back now. Before continuing, Bondi paused, glancing toward the camera. Before we dive deeper into this stunning confrontation, she said, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more explosive political revelations that the mainstream media won't show you. It was clear, this was no ordinary Senate hearing. What was about to unfold was the beginning of a high-stakes battle, one that could reshape the public's perception of judicial independence, the confirmation process, and the role of politics in America's courts. As Bondi laid the documents on the projector, the gravity of the moment became even clearer. Her voice, steady and authoritative, continued to carry across the room. She wasn't just making an accusation. She was challenging the very foundation of the confirmation process that had elevated Justice Barrett to the Supreme Court. Bondi's eyes scanned the room as she explained, "The documents I've obtained indicate that, prior to Justice Barrett's confirmation hearings, a private understanding was reached regarding how she would approach certain categories of cases." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. On the surface, this wasn't just a procedural issue. It was a direct challenge to the very ethics of the confirmation process. Senator Richard Blumenthal, his voice sharp, quickly interrupted. "Miss Bondi, these are extremely serious allegations. Can you be specific about the nature of this alleged arrangement?" The room, already tense, grew even quieter. Every senator, every aide, and every viewer at home was waiting for Bondi's response. Without missing a beat, Bondi turned to the first document in her folder. "This," she said, "is an email exchange between two senior officials in the previous administration, dated September 18, 2020, 3 days before Barrett's nomination was officially announced." She placed the document on the projector, and as the text appeared on the screen, the chamber collectively leaned forward. The email described a mutual understanding between Barrett and certain administration officials about how she would rule on certain cases. Justice Barrett, maintaining her calm, leaned into her microphone. "These emails, if authentic, do not include me as a recipient, Miss Bondi. I never participated in such discussions." Bondi nodded, acknowledging the point, but quickly countered. "That's correct, Justice Barrett. You're not directly copied in the emails, but the next document addresses that point." She proceeded to reveal a calendar entry showing a private meeting between Barrett and the officials the very next day, sparking a fresh wave of whispers across the room. The tension mounted as Bondi pressed on. She wasn't just alleging unethical behavior, she was presenting what appeared to be a paper trail that could expose a secret pact between Barrett and powerful figures in the previous administration. The committee room was now at a tipping point. Could this be the smoking gun that would shake the Supreme Court to its core? Or was Bondi's case unraveling before it had even begun? The stakes had never been higher, and the hearing was only getting started. Bondi's pace quickened as she moved to the next piece of evidence, her voice unwavering. "This is a memorandum summarizing the meeting," she said, placing the document on the projector for all to see. The room was on edge as the memo appeared on the screen. It wasn't just a standard meeting note, it was a detailed account of legal discussions involving Barrett, one that seemed to suggest a mutual understanding of how Barrett would rule on critical cases once confirmed. Senator Josh Hole, visibly troubled by the weight of the accusation, quickly turned to Barrett. "Justice Barrett, I need to ask you directly, did this meeting occur as described in this memorandum?" The room fell silent, and all eyes were on Barrett. Her response was calm but firm, her voice cutting through the tension. "Senator, I took dozens of meetings during the nomination process. I cannot recall the specific content of each, but I can state unequivocally that I never made commitments about how I would rule on future cases. That would violate judicial ethics." Bondi, not backing down, pressed on. "Justice Barrett, please look at page V3 of the memorandum, which specifically mentions your concerns about how these discussions might appear if made public." The room grew even more still as Barrett scanned the document. The passage she was looking at suggested that Barrett had raised concerns about confidentiality in a way that went beyond the typical nomination discussions. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Barrett's demeanor remained steady, but her hand was visibly gripping the edge of the table. Bondi's claim was taking on new layers of complexity. If these documents were authentic, They painted a picture of secretive meetings and unspoken agreements. But Barrett's response remained clear. No commitments had been made that would compromise her judicial independence. The committee was at a crossroads. Would the next piece of evidence push the scales in Bondi's favor, or would Barrett's unwavering defense continue to dismantle the allegations? The hearing had shifted from routine questioning to a high-stakes legal drama that had everyone in the room, and watching at home, on edge. The room was thick with anticipation as Bondi moved forward, her eyes locked on Justice Barrett. The next document she introduced was far more concerning, at least on the surface. "This is a sworn statement from a witness who was present at the meeting described in the memorandum," she said, her voice carrying the weight of what she hoped was the final piece of the puzzle. The room went silent as the statement appeared on the projector. The statement came from a former mid-level Justice Department official, someone who had been present at the meeting in question but had remained anonymous until now. According to the witness, the meeting had discussed not just procedural matters, but specific legal positions that Barrett would take once confirmed. What was even more troubling was the assertion that this witness had only come forward recently, after noticing a pattern in Barrett's rulings that seemed to align with the commitments outlined in the documents. Bondi paused, allowing the implications of the testimony to sink in. This wasn't just a matter of paperwork. This was a direct accusation of a quid pro quo, a private arrangement that could tarnish Barrett's judicial independence forever. The room was electric with tension, every senator on edge as they processed what was being presented. But Justice Barrett, maintaining remarkable composure, interrupted. "Ms. Bondi, you mentioned a whistleblower who took notes during this alleged meeting," she said, her voice calm but pointed. "May I ask if those original notes have been produced?" Bondi faltered for a moment. "The whistleblower provided their recollection, which formed the basis of the memorandum," she replied, but Barrett's question hung in the air. "So, there are no contemporaneous notes from this person," Barrett pressed. "Only a memorandum created recently based on 2-year-old memories?" The room shifted uncomfortably. Bondi's meticulously constructed case, which had seemed so airtight, was now under serious scrutiny. Barrett, in her quiet yet unflinching way, had just cast doubt on the credibility of the very foundation of Bondi's argument. "I understand the skepticism," Bondi said, her voice still steady, but now tinged with uncertainty. "That's why I had these documents examined by independent forensic analysts." She introduced affidavits from digital forensics experts who had verified the metadata and authentication markers of the electronic documents, aiming to quash any doubts about their authenticity. Despite her best efforts, the room was no longer on Bondi's side. Barrett's steady, methodical responses were slowly dismantling the case piece by piece, revealing cracks in the foundation of the explosive allegations. The next blow came when Bondi introduced a new document, one she had held back until now. It was a sworn statement from a second witness, someone who claimed to have attended the meeting and to have taken notes that corroborated the claims in the documents. Bondi named the witness, and the room held its breath. But Barrett was quick to turn the tide again. "I was not in Washington, D.C. on the date specified in these documents," Barrett revealed, her voice quiet but firm. "I was giving a lecture at Notre Dame Law School, which was recorded and attended by hundreds of people." She produced travel records and the lecture schedule to verify her claim, and as the truth settled in, the room grew tense with disbelief. Barrett went on, revealing more key facts. The two officials Bondi's documents claimed she had met with on the specified date were both traveling elsewhere at the time, one in Florida, the other in Texas. Their public schedules confirmed that the meeting could not have happened as described. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. What had initially seemed like a slam dunk for Bondi was unraveling before everyone's eyes. The critical factual errors in the documents had now been exposed, and it was clear that they were built on a shaky foundation. The room went silent as the weight of the revelation sank in. These allegations, as convincing as they had appeared, were based on a fundamental falsehood. Barrett, her composure unbroken, spoke directly into the silence. "I understand that the Supreme Court's work is controversial, and people of good faith can disagree with our decisions," she said, her voice steady but firm. But allegations of secret deals and ethical breaches require extraordinary evidence, evidence that respects facts and context. The chairman of the committee, recognizing that the momentum had shifted, turned to Bondi. "Miss Bondi, do you have a response to Justice Barrett's points about the document creation date and the meeting's physical impossibility?" Bondi, visibly shaken, stood frozen at the podium, her carefully constructed case collapsing in real time. This had turned from an explosive revelation into a dramatic public unraveling of her credibility. The truth had emerged, and it had undone everything she had worked so hard to build. The committee's atmosphere had shifted from one of intense scrutiny to one of near disbelief. This wasn't just a political confrontation anymore. It was a matter of raw, undeniable facts. The room remained still, everyone waiting for Bondi's response, but the momentum had clearly swung in Barrett's favor. The tension in the room was palpable as Barrett's defense began to take full form, revealing the flaws in Bondi's case one by one. Bondi, now visibly rattled, continued to push forward, but Barrett wasn't backing down. "Miss Bondi," Senator Ted Cruz interjected, his tone sharp, "are you suggesting that a document created last month accurately reflects a meeting from 2020 without contemporaneous notes or recordings?" His question struck at the heart of the matter. How could a document, created 2 years after the alleged meeting, be trusted as accurate? The room buzzed with murmurs. Bondi had relied on expert analysts to authenticate the documents, but Cruz's challenge exposed a critical inconsistency that had yet to be addressed. The metadata showed the documents were recent creations, not records from the time of the supposed meeting. Bondi hesitated, clearly thrown off by the revelation. But Barrett wasn't finished. She had done her homework. "During the recess," she said, her voice calm but unwavering, "my staff made inquiries about the alleged meeting date. I was not in Washington, D.C. on the date specified in these documents. I was giving a lecture at Notre Dame Law School, which was recorded and attended by hundreds of people." Barrett produced travel records and the lecture schedule to verify her whereabouts on that day, further solidifying her defense. Barrett's next revelation hit even harder. "Furthermore," she continued, "the 2 officials I supposedly met with were both traveling on that date as well. One in Florida, the other in Texas." The room fell silent. The documents Bondi had presented, despite appearing legitimate at first, contained a glaring factual error. They had the meeting happening on a date when Barrett and the key officials were nowhere near Washington. Bondi stood at the podium, her face reflecting the weight of this new information. The case she had so carefully built had crumbled. Barrett had proven that the entire foundation of the documents was flawed, and the room could feel the shift. Bondi's challenge had turned from an accusation into a struggle to salvage what little remained of her credibility. As Barrett addressed the committee, her calm and collected demeanor contrasted sharply with Bondi's unraveling stance. "The documents, despite their convincing appearance, contain a critical factual error that undermines their entire premise," Barrett stated. Her voice was firm, but there was no triumph in it, only the quiet assurance that facts and context would always prevail over baseless accusations. The committee, now fully aware of the stakes, understood the gravity of what had just transpired. The documents had been debunked. But more than that, the conversation had shifted from the accusations themselves to the larger issue at hand, the integrity of the judicial process and the importance of truth in these high-stakes confrontations. The room was thick with tension as Bondi stood, visibly rattled by Barrett's powerful defense. She wasn't ready to concede just yet, however. Bondi introduced one final piece of evidence, a handwritten note, supposedly from Barrett herself, taken during the meeting in question. This, she claimed, would seal Barrett's fate. Barrett examined the note quietly. "The handwriting appears to be mine," she admitted, before clarifying, "but this note has been presented without context." She then explained that it was from her personal preparation materials before the confirmation hearings, not evidence of any secret arrangement. The markings, which Bondi had used to argue her case, were simply related to confidentiality in her previous legal work. With that, Barrett dismantled Bondi's key piece of evidence, showing it was a standard note-taking practice and not proof of misconduct. "I would never make commitments on future cases," Barrett affirmed, asserting that any suggestion of improper deals was false. Bondi, unable to counter Barrett's clear explanation, stood silently. The committee now understood that the allegations were unfounded, and the momentum in the room had completely shifted in Barrett's favor. Top of form, bottom of form. Barrett's calm and methodical response left the room stunned, but Bondi wasn't ready to back down just yet. The committee remained silent, waiting for Bondi to respond, but her carefully constructed case was rapidly disintegrating. The final blow came when Barrett addressed the documents once more, this time with irrefutable proof that they were fundamentally flawed. "I was not in Washington, D.C. on the date specified in these documents," Barrett said firmly, as she presented travel records and a public lecture schedule from Notre Dame Law School that showed she had been in Indiana, not Washington, at the time of the supposed meeting. The two officials she was said to have met with were also confirmed to be elsewhere on that date. Bondi's case had fallen apart. Barrett had shown that the documents weren't just inaccurate. They were impossible. The room was silent as everyone processed the magnitude of the revelation. Barrett then delivered a final statement, not in triumph, but in quiet resolution. The documents, despite their convincing appearance, contain critical factual errors. Allegations of secret deals require extraordinary evidence, and these claims simply don't stand up to scrutiny. Bondi stood frozen at the podium, her case unraveling before her. The chairman turned to her, but it was clear that the tide had shifted irrevocably in Barrett's favor. The hearing had gone from a fiery confrontation to an undeniable victory for the justice, leaving Bondi with little more than a broken narrative. Top of form, bottom of form. What began as a high-stakes showdown in the Senate Judiciary Committee quickly escalated into one of the most dramatic confrontations in recent political history. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi took the stage with explosive allegations, claiming that Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett had secretly arranged her confirmation in exchange for influencing her rulings on certain high-profile cases. Bondi's documents, presented as irrefutable evidence, seemed to challenge the very foundation of Barrett's appointment to the nation's highest court. But what followed was nothing short of a masterclass in defense and due process. Barrett, with unshaken composure, methodically dismantled Bondi's case piece by piece. The key documents that Bondi had so carefully relied upon were proven to be riddled with errors, misstated emails, falsified meeting schedules, and questionable memoranda that could not stand up to Barrett's scrutiny. The seemingly explosive claims quickly fell apart as Barrett pointed out inconsistencies, revealing that the very core of the allegations was built on a foundation of falsehoods. One of the most pivotal moments came when Barrett presented travel records, proving that she wasn't even in Washington on the date mentioned in Bondi's documents. Furthermore, the two officials that Bondi claimed Barrett had met with on that same day were also confirmed to be traveling elsewhere. These revelations left little room for doubt, and the impact was clear. The allegations were simply not credible. Despite the tension in the room and the gravity of the accusations, Barrett's calm, fact-based defense won the day. She stood firm in her commitment to judicial ethics, emphasizing that she would never make commitments on how she would rule on future cases. "I would never violate my judicial oath," Barrett stated, reinforcing the importance of judicial independence and transparency. However, the aftermath of this hearing extends beyond just the specific allegations against Barrett. The confrontation raised serious questions about the judicial confirmation process and the increasing politicization of the courts. How can we ensure that future Supreme Court nominees are free from political manipulation? What measures can be put in place to safeguard the independence of the judiciary? While Barrett's defense cleared her name, the broader issues of transparency, accountability, and the public's trust in our institutions remain as pressing as ever. This dramatic moment serves as a reminder of how important it is to rely on verified facts in such high-stakes political battles. Allegations can quickly spiral out of control, but it's the power of truth and context that ultimately prevails. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing may have ended, but the lessons from this confrontation will echo in future confirmation hearings and political debates. Thank you for watching this detailed breakdown of the Barrett-Bondi showdown. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more political showdowns and in-depth coverage. What do you think about the allegations? Was Barrett's defense enough to fully clear her name, or do you believe there are lingering questions about judicial transparency? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for more updates on the issues that shape our nation's political landscape. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.